Part 9. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Seong Lang-go. Chapter 81. What do you think of this country? What do you think of us? SpecialAbilities asked. Why are you asking me this? Li Anping asked in surprise. I know what you are thinking. We, those of us who are high and low, only know how to fight for power, corruption, and maintain stability. We let the evil people go unpunished, and let the rich occupy more than half of the country's wealth. We let the poor be exploited, oppressed. Isn't it? Li Anping looked at SpecialAbilities coldly. Li Qian on the side became nervous again, fearing that the two of them would fight again. Let me show you something. SpecialAbilities walked to the living room and brought a tablet computer and placed it in front of Li Anping. Li Anping clicked on it and looked at it, and found that it contained information on some senior officials being secretly arrested and their property frozen. There are also many cases where wealthy people are under house arrest for fraud, tax evasion, misappropriation of national assets, and suspicion of insider trading. We are not what you think. We haven't done anything. On the contrary, we have been doing it, quietly and secretly. SpecialAbilities said from the side, it's just Daxia Lonke, except for the main battle. There are more than 10,000 intelligence officers with superpowers in the country. Together with other disciplinary inspection commissions, anti-corruption bureaus, investigation bureaus, military intelligence bureaus, etc., there are at least more than 150,000 intelligence officers across the country. There are more things than you think, but knowing the problem doesn't mean we can solve it. Li Anping looked at the information on the tablet seriously, and heard SpecialAbilities' voice. We also know that Shang Angguo has a problem, but can we kill him so straightforwardly? What bad impact will this have? Not to mention that everyone in the officialdom is in danger. Even in Zhongdu, Shang Zhenbang has fallen. You know how much we need to do to deal with the aftermath. Li Anping frowned, but did not answer in a hurry. What official doesn't want his country to be strong? What's more, when we are in our position, how many people are always thinking about fighting for power? But our country is too big, with 10 million square kilometers and a population of more than 2 billion. Any decision affects tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of people. This is not as simple as killing a few people. So we can only make changes bit by bit and plan bit by bit. Because we are serving the 2 billion people in Daxia, we cannot take risks. Seeing that Li Anping didn't speak, SpecialAbilities continued, and we are not the only country in the world. Ice Castle has border frictions with us in the north every month. In the south, Baiyu, Fulun and other more than a dozen countries have already. The war has stopped and everyone is staring at us. There are also the Sun Islands in the West Sea, and the issue of Dongyang and our sea rights has been unresolved. Under this situation, if there is some domestic turmoil, it will cause a new round of changes in the international situation. Maybe the entire Daxia regime will be overturned. But now, at least the lives of most people are getting better and better. Do you think that in this situation, we can take risks for such a small group of people? Seeing Li Anping nod, SpecialAbilities looked at him solemnly. I don't want to imprison you or control you, I just want this country to become better. I understand what you said. Li Anping looked at SpecialAbilities seriously, but I can't bear the growth of evil in front of me. I also think that simple compromise will not lead Daxia to become stronger. Of course, SpecialAbilities said, we also support you in fighting those villains and scum. I believe that as a person, you will not kill innocent people indiscriminately. Nor will you deliberately cause social unrest and give us opportunity for neighbors. After saying that, SpecialAbilities stared at Li Anping closely. Li Anping looked at him for a while, and finally couldn't help but turn his head. Don't worry. I promised you I wouldn't go too far. Thank you. SpecialAbilities smiled. On behalf of the country and the people, I thank you. So next, Li Anping promised SpecialAbilities that he would not kill people randomly again, at least he would give enough reasons to kill the other party before killing him again. Especially for famous and status officials, rich people, and others, even if he kills them, he will notify Daxialanke as soon as possible so that they can deal with the aftermath as soon as possible and calm down all the impact of the incident. Then I will send a team of people to contact you in a few days. They will be responsible for the communication between you and Daxialanke from now on. Li Anping said coldly, no need. Don't worry, I will abide by the agreement. Xiaoligang smiled and said, Li Anping, you are a person with superpowers. If you really want to do something in Daxia and Tianjing, you will definitely not be able to get around Daxialanke. Li Anping thought for a while, glanced at the same Li Qian and said, then let Li Qian be responsible for this matter. Oh, Xiaoligang glanced at Li Qian in surprise, as if he didn't expect that the relationship between the two was not bad, and he said, okay. Sure enough, it was right to send a beautiful woman there. After all, Li Anping is still very young, and Li Qian is also very beautiful. If the two of them can be together, the bond between Li Anping and Daxialanke will be even higher. In this case, things to come. Xiaoligang shook his head and lamented that he was thinking too much now. He said, speaking of which, is this your first time to Tianjing? How is it going? Where do you plan to go? Nanshan Park, Juxing Bridge, Art Museum, Tianjing. There are a lot of fun places here at Beijing University. Not interested. Li Anping's answer was not what Xiaoligang expected. When will you start teaching me how to read qi? If you're in such a hurry, let's start tomorrow. But you really should go out for a walk more often. Otherwise, if this continues, you will become more like an old man than me. Li Qian on the side also helped. It's time to go for a walk, so that you can familiarize yourself with the terrain and understand the people's sentiments. She really wanted to go out with Li Anping, and a date would be even better. Li Anping looked at Li Qian in embarrassment and said, let's talk about it then. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. Xiaoligang suddenly took out a black credit card from his arms and threw it to Li Anping. The annual quota is 100 million, and each transaction cannot exceed 10 million. It should be. It's enough for you. Li Anping didn't say much and just accepted it. He knew that the government was afraid that he would do something for money. I also want to monitor his behavior through transaction records. And this Xiaoligang handed Li Anping a dark mobile phone. The Nokia Model 3 developed by the military is resistant to falls, explosions, and impacts. It is most suitable for people with close combat abilities like you. The next morning, on the lawn of the courtyard, Li Anping and Xiaoligang stood opposite each other. From ancient times to the present, people have divided abilities into mutation, parasitism, bloodline, field, ancient and external, based on their different sources and causes. Xiaoligang talked eloquently. Although the reasons for the abilities of the 6 major departments are different, there is one thing they have in common. Niankai. Li Anping said softly. That's right, it's Nian Qi. Xiaoligang nodded. As long as you are an ability user above level 0, no matter which of the 6 major systems you have, you will have Nian Qi. It represents the evolution of the body and spirit. Although it is still, there is no scientific method that allows ordinary people to detect mind energy, but it does exist in our world. Ability is a talent, and Nian Qi can maximize your talent. As he spoke, Xiaoligang raised his right hand, and Li Anping felt the energy of thought running out of his body and gathering on his right hand. The thought energy you have at the first level can enhance the physical strength of your body, improving your destructive power and defense. But it cannot improve your strength and speed. What is the speed of pure physical strength? After covering the mind energy, the power will not increase out of thin air. Then, Xiaoligang's right hand was covered with more and more thought energy, burning like a blazing fire in his hand. After reaching the second energy level, your body and spirit will improve again, and the quality of your thoughts will also increase. You will find that your thoughts can begin to enhance your abilities. After reaching the third energy level, quantitative changes finally led to qualitative changes, SpecialAbilities said as he punched forward with force. I saw the ball of thought energy in his hand, like a falling meteor, hitting the lawn at his feet. Boom! It looked like a landmine explosion. The place where the air ball hit exploded, throwing up countless grass and rocks. After reaching the third energy level, the mental energy you possess can begin to independently affect the material world. You no longer need the physical body. Just use pure mental energy. At this level, there are even masters who use mental energy to resist bullets. Li Anping thought of Kano, whose thought energy seemed to be able to interfere with the material world independently. And at the fourth energy level, there is a new difference. Before SpecialAbilities could finish his words, his raised right hand suddenly shot out a bolt of lightning. The lightning was like a sword of light, shooting out a distance of 50 meters and then becoming still. SpecialAbilities waved the 50-meter thunder sword and said, "The fourth level of mind energy is more closely integrated with your ability. For example, like now, my simple discharge ability, through mind energy, has transformed the world. One of the most violent forces in the world is condensed into a sword of thunder. Focus your thoughts on your eyes." When Li Anping heard the words, he immediately followed the instructions. The sword, which was made of thunder and lightning, suddenly changed in his eyes. In the sword, there was not only thunder and lightning, but also a large amount of thought energy. It was the thought energy that turned the thunder and lightning into a solid-like existence. But at the same time, the lethality and characteristics of electricity have not changed much. Li Anping could imagine that once he was hit by this thunder sword, not only his body would be cut, but the paralysis and high temperature effects of thunder and lightning would also appear at the same time. This is the simplest application of mind energy superimposed on abilities to produce changes. After reaching the fourth level, due to differences in abilities, personalities, experiences, and thinking, the shape and form of abilities will change in various ways. Ability users' the strength will also be greatly improved at this stage. Li Anping thought, "My ability is to strengthen myself by devouring souls and bodies. I don't know how to change through mind energy after the fourth energy level." When SpecialAbilities said this, his eyes suddenly looked complicated when he looked at Li Anping. Although Nian Qi can increase the strength of the ability user through practice, personal talent is probably the guarantee of where the ability user can go in the end. He suddenly sighed, "You are still a level 1 ability user, right?" Seeing Li Anping nod, he continued, "When you were at the first level, you already had strength comparable to that of a fourth level ability user. Your ability seems to be at the first level." SpecialAbilities thought that this was the superiority of Li Anping's ability, which had a great bonus on the body. "But I never imagined that Li Anping became stronger by eating people." The level of ability cannot measure the strength of Li Anping's combat power at all. Even if he remains at the first level, as long as he eats enough people, Li Anping will be invincible. First sequence. "What is that?" Li Anping asked. I said before that the talent of the ability user represents his limit. Sometimes, as long as the ability is strong enough, even a level 0 ability user can defeat a level 3 ability user. In order to distinguish the threat level of different abilities, more than 20 years ago, major organizations jointly issued an ability sequence. SpecialAbilities said, "Like animal communication, fluorescent body are the weakest abilities, ranked in the fifth sequence, and the most powerful abilities are all in the first sequence." "Oh," Li Anping's eyes showed curiosity, "what is the most powerful ability of the first sequence in the world now?" Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang. Chapter 82. The strongest ability, SpecialAbilities murmured, seeming to remember something. In the ability sequence, not all abilities in the world have been collected. After all, not all ability users will reveal their abilities. Often only those who are too famous, or whose abilities do not need to be hidden, will take the initiative to reveal their abilities. Each of the 6 major series of abilities exists in the first sequence. But in terms of being the strongest, according to the existing data, there is indeed such a field-based ability, which is recognized as the most threatening ability. SpecialAbilities suddenly asked Li Enping, 50 years ago, there was a disaster in the Western continent. Have you heard about it? Has it been introduced in history textbooks? Could it be? Li Enping also remembered something, with some disbelief in his eyes. The first level 5 ability user in history, moving natural disaster, Damir Donner. His ability is to control the magnetic field. SpecialAbilities said, he can change the ionosphere in the sky by controlling the Earth's magnetic field. Control the collision of high-energy particles in the atmosphere, change the temperature of the stratosphere, and even change the magnetic poles. Li Enping looked at SpecialAbilities with a blank expression, and suddenly said a little embarrassedly, "Can you make it simpler?" "Oh, it can also create lightning storms or heat the atmosphere to shoot down objects in the air. It can even use microwaves to conduct heat into the atmosphere to completely isolate all communications and radar systems." This is just what he did at the beginning. SpecialAbilities sighed, 50 years ago, he was the first person to reach the 5th energy level. No one knew how strong an ability user of this level was. When everyone really faced the threat of Damir, he had grown to a terrible point. Change the geomagnetic poles to create artificial earthquakes, use auroral currents to set up virtual antennas, release large areas of electromagnetic radiation, and even emit electromagnetic waves of specific frequencies to change and control people's emotions. Volcanoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes, flash floods, and mudslides. In just 1 year, more than 30 million people around the world died in disasters caused by Damir. Until the end, he attempted to invert the entire planet's north and south magnetic poles, introduce solar wind, blow away the entire atmosphere, and kill all humans. It seems like this person is a lunatic. Li Enping exhaled, but it seems that he was stopped. The subsequent investigation showed that he had strong antisocial and anti-human emotions and wanted to destroy the entire human race. In fact, he almost succeeded. SpecialAbilities looked at Li Enping and said, "Until now, major organizations in the world still regard Damir's ability as the strongest ability in the first sequence of abilities. However, 50 years later, no one has found anyone who can a person with the ability to control magnetic fields at a large range and high intensity like Damir. Of course, there are some people with abilities who think that his ability is not the most powerful, but just the most famous and the most insane. Others have suggested that there are people in the world with abilities that can suspend time, or even people with abilities that can travel through time and space. This is the strongest ability. Are there really people with the ability to pause time? Li Enping asked curiously. I don't know. Even if it is true, it is difficult to confirm. SpecialAbilities shook his head, but among the ability users I know so far, there is no one with the ability to suspend time. Okay, let's end the topic of ability sequence. Let's go back to the issue of Nian Qi. SpecialAbilities said, your current Nian Qi can attack, defend, converge, and detect. Today let's start with the attack. SpecialAbilities concentrated his mind energy on his right hand and said to Li Enping, follow my example, focus your attention, and slowly concentrate the mind energy in your body into your hand. Li Enping followed SpecialAbilities' words and felt that his mind energy was slowly concentrating on his arms. However, it didn't gather much before it suddenly dispersed and flowed up and down his body again. Don't be frustrated. You can't control much at first. You have to practice slowly. Nian Qi is a collection of spirit and body. Control it just like you want to control your thoughts. After trying 4 or 5 more times, Li Enping finally covered his right hand with a small ball of mind energy. However, no matter how hard he concentrated his mind energy, the amount of mind energy in his hand stopped increasing. This is because your reading energy is too little and your control is too weak. SpecialAbilities thought for a moment and said, well, you can use your reading energy to write. Xiaolitukeng stretched out a finger and gestured in the air. Then the thought energy stayed where his hands crossed. Li Anping looked carefully and found that it was Xiaolitukeng. After finishing writing, Xiaolitukeng wiped out the 3 words written with his mind energy with a wave of his hand. Just write your own name here, Xiaolitukeng said, write it until your energy is used up. Do you want to try it first? Li Anping nodded, gathered his mind energy on his fingers, and began to write in the air. But things that are usually simple have become extremely difficult now. Not only was his Nian Qi disobedient, and his hand gestures were crooked, but Li Anping just finished writing the word Li and the Nian Qi in the air could not control the dissipation. Xiaolitukeng laughed, try more, you are too weak in this area. Keep writing like this, you can increase the total amount and control of your mental energy. The amount of thought energy is not static. In addition to improving the ability level, it can evolve the mind and body, and increase the amount of energy. Using Nian Qi frequently and consuming all Nian Qi many times can also increase the total amount of Nian Qi, but this is much slower than the increased amount of Nian Qi increased by upgrading. Then you practice first. I'll go back to the base first, and we'll resume class tomorrow morning. After Xiaolitukeng finished speaking, he was about to leave, but a scream suddenly sounded from the gate. What did you do? Xia Yunyun, wearing heavy makeup, black stockings and high heels, walked towards Xiaolitukeng and Li Anping. From a distance, it looks very enchanting. But Xiaolitukeng wasn't very happy when he saw her dressed like this. Why is the turf turned up? And the orchard, why are so many trees cut down? Ah! Who did it? Xia Yunyun pointed at Li Anping's nose and said, did you do it? You must have done it. Okay, you just stayed at my house for a day, that's it? If I let you stay for a few more days, wouldn't the house have to be demolished? That's enough. Don't blame Li Anping. It's all my fault. I've already asked someone to fix it, Xiaolitukeng said coldly, the problem is you. Look what time it is now. You didn't go home all night last night. I didn't answer the phone and didn't come back until noon. Look at you, do you look like a girl? Where were you last night? What does it have to do with you? I'm an adult, you have no right to control me. After saying that, she glared at Li Anping, as if to say, let's wait and see. Xiaolai said airily, if you don't tell me, don't go out anymore. Just stay at home every day and I will hire a tutor for you. What right do you have to do this? Xia Yunyun shouted, you are not my father. You can't control me. After saying that, Xia Yunyun regretted a little. She looked at Xiaolitukeng blankly, a little at a loss. Xiaolitukeng was also stunned, and after a few seconds he said, then I have to take care of you. Unless you tell me where you went yesterday, you won't be able to go anywhere in the future. And even if you don't tell me, I can find out where you went. You, Xia Yunyun glared at Xiaolitukeng, who also looked at her coldly. After a few seconds, she said angrily, I went drinking with Song Tian yesterday. Song Tian? He is Grandpa Song's grandson, Xia Yunyun said angrily. That kid is not a good guy. You should have less contact with him in the future. Xia Yunyun snorted coldly, he is not very good, but at least he still remembers my birthday. Xiaolitukeng's eyes widened and he asked doubtfully, yesterday was your 18th birthday. Humph, Xia Yunyun sneered, you don't even remember your birthday, how can you remember me? Watching Xia Yunyun sneer and walk towards the villa. Xiaolitukeng wanted to say something, but after opening his mouth several times, there was still no words. Li Anping glanced at him and said, why don't you go up and comfort her? Xiaolitukeng sighed, forget it, it will be fine in a few days. He walked out of the courtyard without looking back, practice more on your own, and we will continue tomorrow morning. Li Anping looked at Xiaolitukeng's back, wondering if it was an illusion. At this moment, when he looked at Xiaolitukeng's somewhat forlorn back, he felt that he was not as energetic as when he first saw him. It seems more like the back of an old man. However, Li Anping had nothing to do about this kind of family conflict. After thinking for a while, he continued to write with his mind energy. After several attempts, he was finally able to write Li Anping's second word. But before I finished writing, Niankai's words collapsed again. So for almost the whole day, Li Anping stood in the courtyard and wrote the words Li Anping. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Go. Chapter 83. Li Anping wrote for more than an hour, and finally was able to write out the 3 words Li Anping crookedly and completely. However, less than a second later, the 3 words dissipated together. At this time, Li Anping's mental energy was temporarily exhausted. At first, he planned to take a rest and wait for the mental energy to recover before continuing to practice. However, feeling that his body and spirit were still very strong, he decided to exercise again. The information about SpecialAbilities' ability and the power he used yesterday made Li Anping feel a sense of urgency. Knowing that there are so many powerful people in the world, for some reason, he felt that his strength needed to be improved urgently. It was like breathing, an instinctive action, constantly reminding him from the inside out. You must become stronger. Because he knew that the contradictions among the top leaders of Daxia were irreconcilable after all. He was only dealing with wealthy businessmen now, and there was no problem with, but if the matter involved the government leaders, SpecialAbilities might be the first to take action. And the way for him to become stronger now, in addition to training, is to absorb souls, and the most effective is the soul of the ability user. But there is no hurry now. He does not want to attract other people's attention or suspicion, or even expose this ability. But after gradually reaching some agreements with the great Xia dragon bird represented by SpecialAbilities, he can absorb souls by the way on the grounds of killing evil. This can not only quietly increase his strength, but also satisfy Li Anping's inner pursuit of punishing evil. At the same time, it is also in line with his behavior pattern all along. Because of unfair treatment, he hates the dark forces of society, which is not easy to cause suspicion of his ability. In this way, he can quietly enhance his strength and prey on more ability users with the permission of the great Xia dragon bird. Especially for the 5th level ability users, absorbing an ability user of the level of Kano and Fang Qi has greatly increased his strength. He can't wait to know how strong he will be if he can absorb a 5th level ability user. Maybe that will make him no longer need to take into account any forces or organizations. But now is not the time. Compared with the 5th level ability users, his current strength is still a little worse. He needs to lie dormant for a while and then slowly accumulate strength for a period of time. Absorbing souls should also be done slowly, and can't be too urgent. Fortunately, SpecialAbilities still has a strong desire to recruit Li Anping, so he is not in danger for a period of time. So Li Anping began to exercise, first 1,000 push UPS, then sit UPS, squats, and handstands. However, with his current physical fitness, doing these exercises is better than nothing. Maybe I should consider weights. Thinking of this, Li Anping began to think while exercising. He summarized his current state, which is great strength, fast speed, and strong recovery ability. Especially after he used the explosive state, the displacement speed of his body alone reached the speed of sound. This is a very powerful force. The only problem is that in the speed of sound state, his control over his body is not enough. Li Anping thought, I have to ask SpecialAbilities to find me a place where I can use the speed of sound state to train. This place is too easy to be destroyed. I also have to ask him to help me find some weights. Just exercising like this now is a waste of time. But he immediately thought of another thing. Since the displacement speed can reach the speed of sound, then his movement speed should also be able to reach the speed of sound, or even exceed it. In the explosive state, the displacement of the body can reach the speed of sound. So now in the normal state, although the displacement of the body cannot reach the speed of sound, at least the movement speed may reach the speed of sound. Thinking of this, Li Anping stretched out his right hand and wanted to try it. He looked around and finally looked up at the sky. He would be embarrassed if he damaged the grass. Li Anping kept his right hand in the shape of a hand knife and suddenly swung it upward. Bang! There was a whistling sound from the place where Li Anping's right hand passed, and a wind-like sword energy rushed up to the sky. This was the sharp shock wave generated by the hand knife passing through the air at high speed. But it was just like a gust of wind blowing towards the sky. There was some noise at the beginning, but it did not cause any damage. Li Anping looked at his palm and slashed the hand knife around again. The shock wave was like sword energy and a vacuum blade. But apart from the whistling sound, it really didn't have much power. At this time, Li Anping thought that the explosive state should be faster. If the high-frequency knife is used, the speed of the knife tip will also be faster, and the cut surface of the blade will make the shock wave sharper. Even if the hand speed is fast enough, the airflow can be superimposed continuously. Maybe it will be powerful? Li Anping waved his knife a few more times, thinking in his heart, I must ask SpecialAbilities to find me a training room. There are so many people with abilities in Daxialanke, so there should be such a place. Otherwise, in an ordinary environment, it is impossible to try a slightly destructive move. While thinking about it, Li Anping found that his mind energy had almost recovered. Li Anping calculated the time and found that it was only more than 10 minutes. It seems that his super recovery ability in the body and mind is also very helpful for the recovery of mind energy. It must be that mind energy is also a combination of the previous two. So Li Anping started writing in the air again. 10 minutes later, Li Qian also walked out of the house. She was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, looking like an innocent college student. Not eating lunch. Not hungry, Li Anping said without turning his head, and did not stop writing at all. Li Qian watched Li Anping curiously as he kept drawing in the air. She was still a level 0 ability user, and could not feel or see the existence of mind energy, so she naturally did not know what Li Anping was doing. So she asked, "What are you doing?" "Practicing mind energy." Li Anping's answer was simple and straightforward. Li Qian nodded as if she understood, and ran back to the house. After a while, she took a bench and put it on the lawn, and sat on the bench to watch Li Anping practice. Li Anping glanced at him, and continued to practice without saying much. Almost the whole afternoon was spent with Li Anping practicing, resting, and then practicing again. And Li Qian just sat aside and watched, and sometimes stood up to exercise with him, but what she did was relatively simple, similar to stretching legs and bending waist movements. After all, her ability will not directly enhance the body. In terms of body, her current body is no different from that of ordinary people. During this period, the property management staff also came once and repaired the lawn. As for the orchard, they just took away the broken trees and replanted fruit trees. Until the sunset, although Li Anping's handwriting was still crooked, it could stay for a few more seconds. At this time, an eye-catching black supercar slowly drove in outside the gate and honked. A man dressed in high-end brand names walked down from it. The man had a handsome face and a tall figure. He exuded a high-ranking and outstanding temperament, but his expression looked a little careless. In the villa, Xia Yunyun had just dressed neatly. The black evening dress matched her snow-white, tender skin, and her youthful face. She looked stunning and pure. Hearing the horn, she hurriedly put down her foundation, picked up her small bag and ran out of the house. As soon as she opened the door, she could see the man standing outside the gate. Xia Yunyun smiled and ran towards the gate. When passing by the lawn, they could see Li Qian looking at them, while Li Anping was still gesturing at the air. Xia Yunyun looked carefully and found that the other party was actually practicing, writing with his breath. Seeing that the other party was still practicing this basic skill, and still looked like a rookie, Xia Yunyun showed a sneer at the corner of her mouth, and without looking at him anymore, Xia Yunyun walked directly to the man's side. "You are so beautiful today." The man looked at Xia Yunyun with admiration. "You are also very handsome today." "Who are they?" The man looked at Li Anping, who was still drawing talismans. When he saw the other party's crooked breath writing, a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. Li Qian, who looked pure and beautiful, attracted more of his attention. "Two idiots. I really don't know why my grandfather let them live here." Xia Yunyun stepped forward and hugged the man's arm, smiling sweetly and said, "Let's go." "Okay." After saying this, the man looked back again and took Xia Yunyun into the car. When the sports car roared and drove away, Li Qian couldn't help asking, "Who is that? He looks so rich. Do you think we should tell SpecialAbilities that his granddaughter ran away with someone?" "No need." Li Anping's eyes were fixed on the words written in front of him from beginning to end. "Ah! What if something happens?" Li Qian said with some worry. "After all, she is still a little girl. Although she is a little rebellious, it is still a little dangerous for her to go out alone at night and not go home. Are you concerned about her?" "How could that be?" Li Qian hesitated and said, it's just that she is too young. I don't want her to suffer and benefit others. That man just now is not a good guy. He has been looking at me with dirty eyes. You heard that her parents died when she was young and she was brought up by a grandfather who was busy with work all day, so you have maternal sympathy, right?" Li Qian looked at Li Anping fiercely and denied, "How could that be? That kid is so arrogant, why should I sympathize with him? No. This is what I said in a psychology book I read recently. It says that women are particularly likely to arouse sympathy when they see children who lack fatherly and motherly love." Li Anping said seriously, his hands still writing. "No, I think the book you read is all nonsense." Li Qian said, "How long do you need to practice this action?" "Are you changing the subject?" Li Anping asked in confusion. "I find that every time you say no, it's usually a sign of guilt or lying." "No." Li Qian stopped talking halfway and looked at Li Anping angrily. Li Anping seemed to feel Li Qian's gaze and said casually, "Don't worry, the security guards in this community are equipped with pistols, have strict discipline, and have combat experience. I'm afraid they all have military experience. They let that kid in, which means he is basically not in danger. And Xia Yunyun, she should also be a person with abilities. I feel the spirit energy on her." "Ah! She is also a person with abilities," Li Qian said in disbelief. "I can't tell at all. Because you are only level 0, you naturally can't feel his spirit energy. And she has the spirit energy, which means her level is at least above yours." As Li Anping finished speaking, he slowly wrote the word Li. His movements were much slower than before. He was trying hard to control the flow of his mental energy to make the characters look more neat, which required a higher level of mental energy control than simply writing. "She is higher in level than me." Li Qian curled her lips and whispered, "What's the use of a higher level?" "Very useful." Although Li Qian's voice was light, Li Anping still heard it clearly. He continued, "So you come to class with me tomorrow and see if SpecialAbilities has any way to quickly improve your ability. Your ability is very strong. If your level is higher, it will be more useful. It will be of great help to me." Li Anping said a lot, but in Li Qian's ears, only the words "it will be of great help to me" remained. Really? Li Qian smiled and looked at Li Anping with satisfaction. After a while, he said, "By the way, are you hungry? I'll go make you dinner. The ingredients here are very complete. You can just try my cooking skills." After that, she ran back to the villa to cook without looking back, leaving Li Anping alone on the lawn, still writing non-stop. What Li Anping didn't tell Li Qian was that not only Xia Yunyun was a capable person, but he also felt traces of mind energy on that man. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Seong Lango. Chapter 84. That night, Li Anping had been standing on the lawn practicing writing with his mind. From the beginning, the duration of chanting the word qi was short and the words looked crooked, but it finally lasted a little longer. But the font still looks like it was written by an elementary school student. However, Li Anping was not impatient or discouraged. He knew that training should be done step by step and not be impatient. And the thing that increases his strength the fastest is not exercise. Exercise only enhances his control over strength and enhances his actual combat ability. When he is familiar enough with Tianjing or coordinates well with Daxialonke, he will start hunting again. Absorbing the souls of humans, especially those with abilities, is the fastest way for him to become stronger. Li Anping hardly took any rest except for dinner, and spent his time practicing boxing and kicking while recovering his energy. Li Qian stayed with him until 11:30 in the evening, but she couldn't hold on and went to bed. Li Anping was left standing under the moonlight, writing quietly on the lawn. Until 2 o'clock in the morning, the silence was broken, and the sound of the door opening reached Li Anping's ears. Xia Yunyun stumbled in and muttered, not knowing what to say. From a distance, Li Anping could smell the smell of alcohol. He looked at Xia Yunyun and found that he was holding one hand on the door. Then he suddenly started vomiting and kept vomiting towards the wall. Li Anping shook his head helplessly, stepped forward and patted Xia Yunyun on the shoulder, asking, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Xia Yunyun shouted, then lowered his head and started to vomit. "You're drunk, let me help you back to the room." Li Anping saw that Xia Yunyun was almost vomiting, and reached out to touch Xia Yunyun's shoulder. As a result, Xia Yunyun opened it with his hands. "What are you doing? I don't want your help." Xia Yunyun squinted his eyes and looked at Li Anping. "So it's you, little rookie." Seeing Li Anping frown, Xia Yunyun smiled delicately. The black evening dress she was originally wearing exposed her plump, white chest. When she smiled, her chest trembled, making her look very sexy. She smiled and said, "Don't be dissatisfied. I started practicing the things SpecialAbilities taught you when I was 5 years old." As he spoke, Xia Yunyun raised his index finger, and saw a smoke-like thought energy rising up and floating in the air. The smoke composed of thought energy kept changing. One moment it turned into a bird, the next it turned into a kitten, a puppy, and finally it turned into the 3 characters Xia Yunyun. It was still written in a fancy way, which is not as skilled as Li Anping. "How many?" Finally, Xia Yunyun breathed lightly on the 3 words composed of his thoughts, and the 3 words instantly shattered into pieces, flew in all directions, and disappeared into the night. Xia Yunyun pointed at Li Anping's chest and said, "I'm in a good mood today, so I'll give you some advice. Don't practice any more random Nian Qi. Let me tell you, no matter how well you practice Nian Qi, your ability is not good enough. It just doesn't work. His level 1 ability is as good as yours. It's useless no matter how hard you train." "Ha ha ha ha," Xia Yunyun giggled, "superpowers are all about his luck, do you know that?" "Do you know?" Smiling, Xia Yunyun suddenly started crying while hugging Li Anping. Li Anping watched innocently as Xia Yunyun hugged him and cried. His coldness during the battle suddenly disappeared, and his expression became a little overwhelmed. "Are you okay? Let's go back to the room first." After waiting for a while, Li Anping asked softly when he found that Xia Yunyun's crying gradually disappeared. "Huh." Li Anping took a closer look and found that Xia Yunyun had already fallen asleep. She hugged Li Anping tightly, and there was still saliva at the corner of her mouth. "The face with light makeup looks like a sleeping angel. It's better to be cute when you're asleep," Li Anping thought. Li Anping couldn't let Xia Yunyun hug him and sleep at the door, so he had to carefully pick him up and walk to Xia Yunyun's room. "Oh, I thought that's where SpecialAbilities talking to himself came from. Is this the case for everyone in the family?" Having said that, Li Anping still carried Xia Yunyun to the bed. He originally wanted to leave, but when he saw the other party looking drunk and disheveled, he sighed. I owe you. So he stepped forward and took off Xia Yunyun's shoes, washed her face, and finally covered her with a quilt. Then he returned to the courtyard and continued to practice reading qi. Until the next morning, Li Anping didn't sleep. He was still energetic, standing on the lawn and practicing seriously. Now after Li Anping writes his name, it takes 20 seconds for the name to disappear, and the font has been upgraded to that of an elementary school student to that of an ordinary person. At this time, SpecialAbilities fell from the sky laughing loudly, looked at Li Anping with satisfaction and said, "Did you get up so early today? I was planning to go to your room to wake you up." Li Anping didn't say anything about his mental and physical strength, and it would have no impact if he basically didn't sleep. Just ask, "What are you learning today?" Let me tell you some basic skills of reading qi. If you want to practice, you should focus on writing. When you can leave 100 names on this grass, you will almost reach the bottleneck Xiao I imagined in vain. I want to say, the basic skill of Nian Qi is to practice more. If you want to sublimate it, you have to cooperate with your own abilities. This depends on your own imagination. I can only help you, lead you in and prepare you well base. Seeing Li Anping nodding, SpecialAbilities continued, the most basic thing about attack and defense is to rely on the coverage of mind energy. As for convergence and detection, one is to converge the mind energy somewhere in one's body, so as to let others you can't feel the effect of your mental energy. The latter is to release the mental energy and sense the distribution of the enemy's mental energy. After saying that, SpecialAbilities raised his palm and released a wave of thought energy. The thought energy stretched out like a tentacle, extending for more than 500 meters before stopping. The thought energy can affect the material world, or it can ignore the material world. After saying this, SpecialAbilities waved his hand and swept the thought energy in a circle of 500 meters around. The thoughts swept through, but had no impact on the house, trees, or grass. By doing this, you can usually feel whether there is mental energy within 500 meters around you. This is the simplest and most direct detection. At a more advanced level, you can feel the existence of mental energy through eyes, hostility, and movements. I may have experienced this in my previous experiences. Because mind energy itself comes from the body and spirit, people with the ability to mind energy often have mind energy coming out of their bodies unknowingly, especially when they are concentrated, nervous, and focused. Anger, and other times. People of different levels usually reveal different thoughts. Generally speaking, the higher the energy level of a person, the more he leaks. Li Anping nodded, he had indeed experienced this before. Many times, this is how he feels the energy in other people's bodies. For example, the 4 ability users in Zhongdu, such as Fang Qi, and the man from yesterday. Then he restrained himself, SpecialAbilities said as he took back the energy of thought in his body. Then Li Anping felt that the thought energy in the other party seemed to gradually disappear. It's similar to holding your breath. It stops the flow of mental energy all over the body, allowing them to be in a still state and concentrate on a certain part. However, at this time, you lack the defense and enhancement effects of mental energy, and the ability user will be more vulnerable than usual. A few seconds later, the thought energy on SpecialAbilities' body appeared again, but this kind of thing is just like practicing holding your breath. Unless you have specially practiced it, ordinary people can only persist for a short time. I can only persist for more than 30 seconds. It's up to you whether you want to practice this or not, but if you rely on physical strength for close combat, I hope you can practice a little bit. It may save your life at a critical moment. One more thing, don't forget, the detection of Nian Qi can only target Nian Qi. He can only detect Nian Qi. On the contrary, convergence is the same. It can only avoid the perception of Nian Qi. For other observation methods, they like infrared rays, satellites, etc. are useless. Following the class, SpecialAbilities talked to Li Anping a lot about the basic knowledge of mind energy and guided him to practice. Take your time and stretch so hard that it feels like you're stretching your own arms. Li Anping raised his hand and slowly stretched out his mental energy. However, compared to SpecialAbilities' 500 meters, Li Anping's mental energy only went out 2 meters and then stopped. If you stretch it out further, the thought energy will continue to dissipate. 2 meters. Not bad, SpecialAbilities said, just keep your mind at a distance of 2 meters, just like waving a pen, and use your mind to write from 2 meters away. Li Anping nodded and slowly waved his fingers. The thought energy stretched out from his fingers was like a pen holder, slowly drawing in the air 2 meters away from him, leaving behind strokes composed of thought energy. Yes, you can start practicing like this now. The distance of basically 2 meters is almost the same. The main reason why you practice the control of mind energy is to enhance the destructive power and defense of your body. Among the 6 major abilities, mutation, parasitism, and bloodline are the best for attack and defense of mind energy. And the fields, ancient and external, are most suitable for the convergence and detection of mind energy. Waiting for your control. If you have enough strength, the main thing is to practice using mind energy to enhance the power of your fists and feet and the body's defense. Although it is difficult for you to exert great power, you still need to practice a little. Then SpecialAbilities guided Li Anping for a while and corrected several of Li Anping's mistakes. When Li Anping asked him how to enhance Li Qian's abilities, SpecialAbilities told Li Anping that level 0 ability users can only be increased through continuous use of abilities. Then Li Anping asked SpecialAbilities to arrange a solid place for him to train, and SpecialAbilities agreed. Then he answered a few more questions from Li Anping and left. During this period, the situation in the eastern continent became increasingly tense. SpecialAbilities spent most of his time at Daxia base, except for guiding Li Anping. After SpecialAbilities left, Li Anping continued to practice writing, until a girl's scream pierced the sky. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Lango. Chapter 85. Xia Yunyun ran out of the villa in her pajamas and walked to Li Anping. Seeing Li Anping looking at her, Xia Yunyun suddenly lost her momentum, her face turned slightly red, and she quickly returned to normal. Did you help me back to the room last night? Li Anping stopped practicing, nodded, and said, it was me. I saw that you were really drunk, so I carried you back to. Did I say anything? Xia Yunyun asked hurriedly. No, you seemed to mumble something in your mouth, but the sound was too soft and I didn't hear it. Xia Yunyun patted her chest and looked relieved, but the next moment she immediately became nervous, with a pair of sword eyebrows raised high. Did you do anything when you carried me up yesterday? No, Li Anping said helplessly. Really? You didn't touch me secretly? You didn't take pictures? Xia Yunyun stared at Li Anping with wide eyes. I said no. Xia Yunyun still looked at Li Anping hesitantly. Then she suddenly whistled, and a sparrow suddenly flew out of the sky, landed on Xia Yunyun's shoulder, and chirped non-stop into her ear. Then Xia Yunyun showed a satisfied smile, shook her shoulders, and the sparrow flew away. She looked at Li Anping and said, you are honest. Seeing Li Anping looking at her puzzled, Xia Yunyun casually said, my ability is to communicate with various animals. It's very weak and scumbag. Li Anping thought to himself, it is indeed a very weak ability, but I don't know what it is like. Will there be unexpected potential? Just now I heard the bird say that I have been seeing you exercising here, and I haven't seen you rest. You are really hard working. But some things are not what you work hard for. Xia Yunyun showed a disappointed smile and said, the ability users are the children of God, but the limit of our life is determined at the moment we are born. For abilities like mine, no matter how hard I try, even if I reach the 5th energy level, it is useless. At this moment, shouts came from outside the door. Yunyun? Why didn't you answer my call? Open the door and let me in. The man who went out with Xia Yunyun yesterday was standing at the gate and shouted to Xia Yunyun on the lawn, "Yunyun, why didn't you answer my call just now? And why did you leave alone yesterday without saying a word?" Seeing the man coming over, Xia Yunyun also put away her lost expression just now, and seemed to have turned back into the unruly girl that Li Anping knew. "How dare you say that? Who told you to wake me up by calling so early? Don't you like Wang Yan? Go find her. Don't bother me, I want to catch up on my sleep." The man shouted a few more times, and saw that Xia Yunyun still ignored him. Suddenly he grabbed the wall hard, kicked his feet, and climbed over the iron gate and chased Xia Yunyun. But he didn't run a few steps, and suddenly found a thought appeared in front of him. Li Anping said coldly, "It is illegal to break into a private house. Get out of the way." The man glared at Li Anping, waved his hand and sent out a stream of mind energy, smashing Li Anping's mind energy to pieces, and then ran towards Xia Yunyun. Li Anping narrowed his eyes. This man's mind energy is basically the same level as Fang Qishi. Should I take action to subdue him? But it's not good for me to intervene in the quarrel between the young couple. At this moment, Xia Yunyun turned around and shouted, "Song Tian, stop right there." The man called Song Tian suddenly stopped, looking at Xia Yunyun tenderly. "Yunyun, listen to my explanation." Not interested. Xia Yunyun raised his sword eyebrows high, and said fiercely, "Get out of here. If you take another step forward, I will call the security guard." Then Xia Yunyun went back to the room directly, and never came out again no matter how Song Tian shouted. Song Tian snorted coldly, and suddenly turned his head to look behind him. Li Anping was crossing his arms and looked like he was watching a show. He looked at Li Anping, feeling a little angry, especially when he saw the other party watching the show. Song Tian's eyes actually showed a trace of murderous intent, but this trace of murderous intent came quickly and went away quickly, and was carefully hidden by Song Tian. He smiled and said to Li Anping, "Hello, my name is Song Tian, I don't know how to address you." He looked like a good gentleman, as if it was another person who had just rudely shattered Li Anping's spirit. "Li Anping." Song Tian smiled, "I heard that Xiao Li, you will live here recently." "Yes." "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just some things. I'm afraid that Xiao Li you don't know very well, so I want to talk to you," Song Tian said. At this time, Li Qian suddenly walked out of the villa, came to Li Anping and asked, "What's going on, noisy so early in the morning?" She was still wearing pajamas with short sleeves and shorts, revealing her snow-white thighs and a curvy figure. Especially with her drowsy look, there is a fresh and refined beauty. "I'm sorry to bother you, miss, I'm Song Tian." "I don't know what this beautiful lady's name is." When Song Tian saw Li Qian again, his eyes lit up. He suppressed his desires and confidently stretched out his hand and asked Li Qian. However, Li Qian ignored his outstretched hand and just glanced at Li Anping. Li Anping replied, "He and Xia Yunyun had a quarrel. It's okay. You can go back to sleep." So Li Qian yawned, walked back to the villa, and continued to sleep. From beginning to end, she did not look at Song Tian, and Song Tian even kept extending his hand to shake. He Song Tian was a little embarrassed and annoyed, retracting his arm, staring at Li Anping and said, "Let me introduce myself. My grandfather is Song Bang, who is General Xia's boss. Our two families have been friends since childhood, and Yunyun and I grew up together." When he said that his grandfather was Song Bang, his voice was particularly loud, as if he was afraid that Li Qian, who was walking towards the villa, would not hear it. Oh! Seeing Li Anping's calm look, he thought to himself that this kid would not be unaware of his family's power and his royal identity, right? He did not expect that Li Anping really did not know. This has never been his concern. There are 9 royal families in Daxia. Every 5 years, the 9 royal families will each elect a representative, and then choose one person from these 9 people based on voting to decide who will be the emperor for the next 5 years. Li Anping knew about this, but the vote was not for all the people in the country, only for the senior officials. So who are the 9 royal families, and who are the 9 royal families? How can ordinary people tell them apart? And Song Tian and his grandfather Song Bang belong to the Song family among the 9 royal families. Song Tian continued, I see that you have been practicing mindfulness. Are you preparing to join the great Xia dragon bird? Speaking of which, I originally planned to work directly in the great Xia dragon bird after returning from studying in the Amist Federation. However, although I have been training since I was a child, I just reached the 3rd energy level last year. Although my grandfather manages the great Xia dragon bird, he thinks that I am not the material for this, and it will be embarrassing for him to go there, so he didn't let me in. Li Anping still looked indifferent. Song Tian gritted his teeth and resisted the urge to slap Li Anping. If it were normal times, if someone didn't take him seriously, he would have killed the other person long ago. However, since Li Anping still lived in SpecialAbilities' house, Song Tian couldn't do anything. But thinking of the other party's poor skills in practicing qi and reading qi, Song Tian smiled secretly. He said, since General Xia values you so much, Xiao Li, you must be very powerful, right? I wonder what level your ability is. Li Anping frowned and said, level 1. He thought to himself, this guy is really annoying, let him go quickly so that I can train. Song Tian heard the answer he wanted to hear, and his face showed surprise and guilt. He comforted, sorry. But the lower the level, the more plastic. I see that General Xia values you so much, you must have your own special place. Then he reminded kindly, Xiao Li, I had a conflict with Yun Yun yesterday. She doesn't want to see me now. Although she also has the ability of level 3, I am still a little worried about her. Song Tian specially added emphasis on level 3, as if he was afraid that Li Anping didn't hear it. Li Anping could only listen helplessly. But Song Tian saw the other party's silence and self-abased look, and then said, you should know that we have been childhood sweethearts since we were young, and I am afraid that we will get married in a few years, so I want you to take good care of her. But this girl is just too kind-hearted and is always nice to everyone. Xiao Li, don't misunderstand. I know, Li Anping said unhappily. Song Tian looked at the other party's angry and embarrassed look, and felt that he had despised the other party in terms of background, worth, and strength, and also eliminated the possibility that the other party wanted to eat swan meat in advance. So Song Tian did not intend to continue to provoke the other party, and waved his hand to say goodbye to Li Anping. It's ridiculous that Song Tian thought Li Anping was just a rookie at level 1, but he didn't know that the other party was a monster whose combat power could not be measured by ability level. If Song Tian really knew the other party's combat power, he would probably never dare to say what he said just now. Watching Song Tian climb over the wall and leave, Li Anping continued to practice, controlling the mind to extend 2 meters to right. Half an hour later, Li Qian came out after washing and dressing neatly. She said to Li Anping, that Song Tian doesn't look like a good person. The second generation of officials are like this. Li Anping seemed to think about the past, and he continued, but Xia Yunyun's matter has nothing to do with us, and it is SpecialAbilities who should take care of it. I understand. I just have nothing to do, so I just think about it. You will have something to do soon. Li Anping's mouth curled up. I ask SpecialAbilities, the best way for a level 0 ability user to upgrade is to use the ability more. When you were in Emerald City, you had used it many times, but you didn't upgrade it, which means that it is difficult to upgrade your ability. You need more practice. Li Qian said with a bitter face, how to practice, although she was reluctant, since Li Anping asked her to contact, Li Qian would still insist on practicing. Aren't you responsible for the contact between me and Daxia Lonke? I'll ask SpecialAbilities to send you out in a few days. You can work at Daxia Lonke for a while now, so you can get familiar with their personnel. During this time, use your ability to interview all the ordinary people and level 0 ability users you meet. Li Qian shouted with a long face. This can be regarded as paving the way for my next hunt. Li Anping smiled at Li Qian and said, "It all depends on you." The latter immediately showed a satisfied smile and nodded firmly, saying, "Well, leave it to me." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 86. 2 weeks later, Li Anping's practice has also changed. He was standing on the lawn, and within 100 meters around him, the grass and the air were densely covered with his name, which looked like at least tens of thousands. From a distance, it looked like some kind of spell or seal covering Li Anping. As his thoughts flashed, these words instantly collapsed, decomposed, and disappeared into countless fragments in the air. Li Anping felt that his control and growth of his mind had reached a limit, the limit of his body and spirit. Even if he continued to practice, the improvement to him would be minimal. He knew that his progress was very fast, and he guessed that this was probably because his ability to strengthen his body and spirit by devouring the body and spirit, and the mind was the unity of the body and spirit, so his foundation was inherently stronger than that of ordinary people, and training was more handy. So Li Anping took back the qi on his fingers. Since this kind of training has reached a bottleneck, it is probably stronger than ordinary first-level ability users, but not yet the level of second-level ability users. So from today, Li Anping will no longer practice writing. He clenched his fists and took a deep breath. The next moment, the qi all over his body came out of his body like a flame and gathered in his hands. When ordinary ability users fight, they are often covered with qi all over their bodies, attacking and defending at the same time. Masters cover the qi on a point. For example, if the opponent's fist hits his abdomen, he will concentrate the qi on the abdomen. If he wants to kick the opponent, he will concentrate the qi on the legs. The delicate manipulation, coupled with the grasp of the battle situation, prevents them from wasting the qi in unnecessary places. Li Anping is different. He does not need to defend, he can regenerate. He thinks his battle is to attack. Attack. Attack again. Destroy the opponent with a storm-like attack. The qi all over his body is concentrated on Li Anping's right fist, and the next moment it is swung out like lightning. The huge force of the punch in the air disturbed the air, and the fist wind formed by it swept in all directions with Li Anping as the center. The grass on the lawn also fell in the direction around Li Anping with the fist wind, and then returned to its original position, but the fist wind of the next punch would press them to the periphery again. Just like breathing in and out, Li Anping's right fist seemed to drive the entire lawn to breathe. Because there is no need to defend, the whole body's mind energy is concentrated on the right hand, and the power of this mind energy is much greater than that of ordinary first-level ability users. After 500 full-strength punches, although the physical strength is still abundant, the mind energy has been exhausted. Li Anping exhaled, turned around and walked towards the house, took a shower, and lay on the sofa in the living room. From today on, relying on training alone, the progress is too slow. If he wants to make rapid progress and become stronger in his ability and body, he will continue to absorb humans the fastest. Maybe, it's time to take action. Li Anping clicked on the web page and planned to read the news. In the Western continent, in the west coast city of the Amist Federation, there have been multiple cases of cannibalism. In Daxia's land city, the construction of a 300-meter-high statue of the true God began today, and many famous true God believers participated in the groundbreaking ceremony. Are there so many celebrities in the true God church? Li Anping glanced at it casually and clicked on the news in Tianjin City. Then he started reading the newspaper. A few minutes later, his face gradually became cold, and a faint red appeared in his pupils. Hey! Just then Xia Yunyun came down the stairs from the second floor and saw Li Anping lying on the sofa and said, It's not easy, you crazy practitioner, why are you lying on the sofa today? I practiced in the morning, and I plan to go online this afternoon to check some information. Li Anping glanced at Xia Yunyun and asked, I ordered takeout, do you want an extra portion? No, keep it for yourself and eat it slowly, Xia Yunyun said unhappily, I will go out with my classmates in a while. During this period, Xiaolikan was busy because of the protest of the diplomats of Baiyu country, and he has not been back for several days. Li Qian was basically not at home during the day because she had just started to get familiar with the work of Daxia Longke, and she came back very late at night because she had to work overtime. So during the day, there were often only Li Anping and Xia Yunyun in the villa. However, Xia Yunyun slept until after 12 o'clock every day, and she would only be seen in the afternoon and at night when Xia Yunyun returned home. In such a large villa, Li Anping stayed alone the longest. Therefore, no one knew what the results of his practice were. After dressing up, Xia Yunyun ran to the living room to look in the mirror again. When she saw Li Anping staring at the tablet, she suddenly asked, Hey, how am I dressed today? Li Anping glanced at her. The gauze dress had a pink pattern and the black underwear was faintly visible. She was not wearing any stockings or pants underneath, revealing a pair of slender, snow-white legs. Li Anping casually said, It's okay, but it's too revealing. Xia Yunyun snorted coldly, old-fashioned, too lazy to pay attention to Li Anping. She picked up her handbag, walked a few steps out the door, but suddenly turned back and asked, Are you not practicing today? Li Anping looked at her unexpectedly and replied, Well, from today on, I will practice in the courtyard in the morning, and I have other things to do at other times. Haha, give up, Xia Yunyun seemed a little angry. She said, You practiced more than 10 hours a day for the past 2 weeks, and now you just give up. Huh, Li Anping looked at her strangely, but replied, It's not that I give up, it's just that I don't need it anymore. Xia Yunyun didn't believe Li Anping's words at all. She originally saw Li Anping practicing so hard every day, and she had some changes in her opinion of him. Unexpectedly, only 2 weeks later, he finally gave up. Thinking of this, Xia Yunyun didn't know why she suddenly became inexplicably angry. She turned around angrily, pushed the door open and left. Li Anping was left with a strange look on his face. Li Anping guessed that Xia Yunyun had been practicing very hard every day for a while, but when she found that her ability was too weak and it was useless no matter how high the level was, she gave up. From then on, Xiaolikan's persuasion was useless every day. Li Anping's status as a first-level ability user and the way he practiced hard reminded her of her past self. However, Xia Yunyun's mood is no longer a consideration for Li Anping. After watching the news and for half an hour, Li Anping picked up his cell phone and made a call. Are you ready with the list and information? Send it to my email. Li Anping picked up the tablet again, looked at a piece of news on it and said, There is one more thing, please check it for me. Next, he began to read martial arts information on the internet about boxing, swordsmanship, and so on. A few days ago, Xiaolikan promised to give him a piece of information about this from De Xiaolongke, and also helped him get a training room. However, Xiaolikan was too busy these days and didn't even return home, and Li Anping didn't have time to ask him about the results. When Li Anping was about to start his own action, a quarrel about him was also going on in an office of Daxia Longke. Why did you cancel the meeting? Xiaolikan stood up, patted his desk, stared at Songbang behind the desk and said, We had agreed to meet Li Anping. And the training room I booked a few days ago, why did you want to let the reserve members of Zhu Rong's team use it? Are you talking about Li Anping? Songbang stroked his eyes, showing that he didn't care. It's very simple. I don't think it's worth it. Daxia Longke has no shortage of talents. Just for Shang Angguo's matter, I didn't let him report directly to the prison because of your face. Not to mention Fang Qi, Jade City matter. Do you still want us to make a special trip to see him? Let him use our equipment. He has great potential, I definitely want him. Songbang raised his hand to stop Xiaolikan from continuing. If he joins Daxia Longke and starts from the bottom, I can consider meeting him. As for the training room, we can wait until he has the corresponding authority before going there. Then of course I couldn't stop him. Are you targeting me? Xiaolikan's thoughts surged up, and crackling static electricity seemed to flash through the air. Songbang, I know what you want. I am not interested in the battle between the royal families. As long as it is good for Daxia, I will support it. Li Anping is one of the most promising talents I have seen in my life. I hope he can stand up on the side of our Daxia Longke, instead of being forced to the side of our enemies by some greedy people. Songbang looked at Xiaolikan expressionlessly, as if he couldn't feel the pressure coming from him. I'm not interested in meeting him. If you insist on lending him a training room, just use one in the suburbs. If I find someone bringing a stranger into our base without my permission, I will kill him on the spot. After saying that, he ignored Xiaolikan. Let the other party leave angrily. Half an hour later, a dark figure emerged from the shadows of Songbang's office. Songbang seemed to be accustomed to human figures, and said in a relaxed tone, "Over there in Bio Kingdom, tell them that I have found the person they want." The figure said, "Yes." After saying that, the dark figure immediately sank into the shadows and disappeared. Songbang thought, strife will arise in the eastern continent. People like Xiaolikan who try to remain neutral forever will have no place in Daxia's future. In contrast, getting the support and understanding of the Fang family would be more helpful to the current situation. But if Tian'er can handle it, Xiaolikan may not be able to support it. When the Fang family is dispatched, it's not impossible for me to let Li Anping go. Thinking of this, Songbang turned on the computer and started working. Let's take another look. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 87. Under an office building in the suburbs of Daxia, a large number of disheveled migrant workers stood at the door of the office building. Some of them held flags in their hands, some had ribbons tied on their heads, they had injustice written on their clothes, and some of them shouted. There were probably hundreds of people chanting and noisy, blocking all the front and back doors of the office building. Blood debt must be paid with blood. Unpaid wages. The security guards in the building looked at each other and stood guard, fearing that this group of migrant workers would break in at any time. A senior security guard seemed very relaxed and comforted him casually, "Don't worry, they don't dare to mess around. Our boss has a powerful background. These bricklayers don't want to get their wages back. The police will come soon. They will come and blast them away." Hearing this, a new security guard asked boldly, "I heard that someone died, so they gathered here." The old security guard denied, "This is not nonsense." But within a few seconds, he sneered and said, "But I heard that a group of thugs drove a container truck and rushed to our company's new land. A few of the strike leaders were arrested, but those workers are still missing." Several other security guards gasped, once again shocked by the ruthlessness of a big boss above them, even though they already knew some of the boss's deeds before coming to work. Their big boss was standing beside the office on the 18th floor above them, looking through the floor-to-ceiling glass at the migrant workers gathered at the door. Huang Heidao had a big belly and said with disdain, "A bunch of idiots dare to play tricks on me." He is Huang Heidao, the chairman of Heidao Group. Anyone who knows him well knows that when he first came out more than 20 years ago, he started in the game room and gathered a group of brothers. Later, he led this group of brothers to the demolition business, specializing in the demolition business for large real estate projects. The company drove away bad households and lowered relocation fees. It also committed murder, arson, intimidation, and extortion. However, Huang Heidao is well aware of current affairs, and his asking price is not high. His wife's natal family has connections in the Urban Construction Bureau and the police station. In addition, he is also a good person himself, so he has never stopped showing his filial piety in all aspects. Therefore, not only was he not arrested in the past 20 years, but he also took advantage of the soaring housing prices to grow bigger and bigger. After establishing the Hadow Group, he also operated several high-end businesses by squeezing out relocation fees, arrears of wages to construction workers, and other illicit means. The community made a lot of money. But now he basically doesn't care about his affairs anymore. All the brothers he used to have were handed over to his younger brother Ahai. Huang Haidao raised this group of people just to do his dirty work. Huang Haidao thought for a while and asked the male secretary on the side, "Where is Ahai? How is his affairs going?" The secretary quickly replied, "Haya hasn't called back yet. He said he wanted to send the person to the sea to help you regain face, Tao yet." This stupid boy, Huang Haidao said, he is getting more and more arrogant. Fortunately, this time he is just a bunch of idiots. If he really offends anyone, even I will support him. When he comes back, I must teach him a lesson. I'll call him later and let him go. Don't cause trouble for me. When Huang Haidao was mid-sentence, the office door was suddenly knocked open. A tall man walked in, and behind him stood a beautiful woman in a blue and white uniform. "Who are you? What do you do? Who let you in?" the male secretary shouted. Li Anping looked at Huang Haidao unscrupulously. When he passed by the male secretary, he could only see that his hands seemed to shake slightly, and a black shadow seemed to flash past, and the secretary fell to the ground. Li Qian behind her closed the office door. Huang Haidao remained calm in the face of danger, looked at the two of them calmly and said, "What do you want?" At the same time, his hand slowly touched the alarm under the table. Li Anping didn't say anything. He directly grabbed the desk, flew it out, broke the glass window of the building, and threw it downstairs. There was a bang, followed by the commotion of countless people downstairs. Li Anping looked at Huang Haidao, whose feet were trembling, and said, "Pay back all the wages you owe. There are also the relocated households who were exploited by you in the past. You can transfer the money into their accounts according to the list within a month." Li Qian, who was behind him, stepped forward and put a list of names, household registrations, and the money they deserved into Huang Haidao's hands. Huang Haidao picked it up and looked at it, and said unwillingly, "I don't have so much liquidity on hand, you will kill me." "Forcing you to death." Li Anping looked at Huang Haidao coldly, walked slowly to his side, then pinched his wrist, and said, "Do you know? I can let you take over your company, you sell your car, your house, and your high-end antiques, jewelry, calligraphy and paintings, and then distribute all the money to the employees and victims, and then kill you." Huang Haidao felt that his wrist was almost broken. What was even more frightening was the threat from Li Anping in his ears, which made him break out in cold sweat. "Do you understand?" With a click, Huang Haidao's wrist was crushed to pieces. "I'm afraid this hand will be disabled for the rest of his life." He screamed like a slaughtering pig, and then kept shouting, I understand, I will definitely give them the money when I sell my property. Someone will check you in a month. If you miss a penny by then, I will follow the plan above." After saying that, he took Li Qian and left without looking back, leaving him in pain. Huang Haidao is lying on the ground. "Right," Li Anping suddenly turned around, "where are your brother and the others?" I don't know." Huang Haidao saw the other parties frown and immediately turned pale with fright. He trembled and said, "But they will return to their original place of residence in a few days, at number 234 9th Avenue. Li Anping nodded and left with satisfaction. Half an hour later, the police arrived at the office building and drove away the group of migrant workers. When they were about to enter Huang Haidao's office, they were all blocked from entering. A few days later, the wage earner found that there was suddenly an extra sum of money in his bank account, which was as much as the salary he had not received. In the early morning, Li Enping stripped down to his upper body and wore a pair of shorts, standing on the lawn to practice. Each time he focused his mind energy on his right hand, and then punched with all his strength. The wind from the punch spread around, blowing Li Qian's hair flying around. Li Qian held a newspaper and said, "According to the surveillance video of the highway, and his party will be back tonight. Huang Heidao has already paid back all his wages. As for the money he has owed over the years, he is still Minato seems to be selling off several of his villas and most of his collection. The list is based on his limits. In this way, apart from the company, he will become a pauper." Li Enping asked while punching, "Where are the other people who have come to us to complain? Did you do it?" Li Qian flipped through the newspaper and said, "Basically everything has been done, but there are still Lai Wenniang of Golden Eagle Group and Yang Qiang of Bale Company who have not paid." Li Enping thought for a while and recalled, "Lai Wenniang? The guy who defrauded fund users of their money, engaged in insider trading, made false accounts, and defrauded pension funds. Yang Qiang, is the guy who repairs unfinished buildings and uses oil. The guy who used barrels as a load-bearing wall collapsed the Hope Elementary School and crushed 5 elementary school students in the mountain area to death? He seemed to be from a prostitute, too, and he also killed his own wife? Yeah, that's all right. What happened to them? Did they escape or plan to resist?" Li Enping said calmly. "Lai Wenniang booked a flight to Dongyang tomorrow morning. Yang Qiang paid for a group of people with many powerful firearms to guard him every day. Plus Aha's group. It seems that you have something to do tonight." "I have to be busy," Li Qian smiled. "I hope there are a few ability users among these people." After saying this, Li Enping stopped talking and closed his eyes. The mental energy was concentrated crazily towards his right fist. More and more mental energy was concentrated on his right fist, becoming as deep as a prison, like a black hole, devouring everything crazily. I saw Li Enping punch out violently, and a massive amount of thought energy centered on his fist, and under his intentional control, exploded towards the sky. The clouds above Li Enping's head surged, and a ray of sunlight was broken along. The clouds shone on Li Enping's body. Li Enping, illuminated by the sun, seems to have been painted with a layer of gold paint, giving people a sense of tranquility and serenity. It was in sharp contrast to the violent appearance of the punch just now. Li Qian on the side quietly retreated with an expression of admiration, leaving Li Enping alone to continue practicing on the grass. After completing the morning practice, Li Enping sat on the sofa in the living room, checking the web page and processing the information on the newspaper Li Qian gave him. During this period of time, through Li Qian's ability, he has monitored more than 3,000 wealthy businessmen, officials, ordinary employees, civil servants, cleaners, police, and other people in Tianjin. But it's not enough. Not only does he want to eliminate evil, but he also wants to become stronger through hunting, especially those with criminal abilities. Originally, Daxia Longke had many ability users, but Li Enping did not plan to confront Daxia Longke and hunt down their ability users. This would cause the entire Daxia to have 4 people including Xiaolikan. All level 5 ability users are hostile to him. So now he is just monitoring ordinary people to look for traces of people with abilities involved in crimes. While he was thinking this, Li Enping heard the sound of a man and a woman approaching. He put the newspaper back into his arms and concentrated on reading the tablet in his hand. Xia Yunyun walked into the living room with Song Tian. When she saw Li Enping lying on the sofa surfing the internet, she frowned. "You have nothing to do. Are you lying here every day?" Seeing that Li Enping didn't reply to her and was still busy surfing the internet, Xia Yunyun cursed in a low voice, "Mud can't hold up the wall." Then she smiled at Song Tian and said, "Wait here for me, I'll go up and change the clothes, will come down." Song Tian nodded in agreement, watched Xia Yunyun go upstairs, and sat down next to Li Enping. At this time, Song Tian looked at Li Anping with a hint of disgust. When he was dating Xia Yunyun recently, he often heard the other party mentioning Li Anping and praising Li Anping for his hard work. And the two seemed to be getting more and more familiar with each other. The biggest problem is that they actually live in the same house every day. All this made him feel a little threatened. He took out a check from his pocket and handed it to Li Anping, saying expressionlessly, "Leave this villa, pack up and leave tonight, this check will be yours. I don't want to see you again when I send Yunyun back tonight." After saying that, he didn't care whether Li Anping answered or not, or he thought that the other party would not have a second answer. He put the check on the sofa and went to the stairs to wait for Xia Yunyun. Until the two of them went out again, Song Tian didn't look at Li Anping directly, as if Li Anping in front of him was not even qualified for him to look at him. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 88. Until Song Tian and Xia Yunyun left, Li Anping ignored them. Compared to these things that seemed like children's jealousy and fighting, he had more serious things to do. Moreover, Song Tian and Xia Yunyun had a close relationship. Li Anping did not intend to suddenly take action for some face issues, causing more trouble for himself, or even affecting his progress in becoming stronger. A few hours later. In the night, Li Anping was moving forward at high speed in the shadows, and Li Qian's voice came from the headset in his right ear. This was something Li Qian brought from Daxia Longke. "Hey, can you hear me? 300 meters ahead, you can see a small courtyard. Yang Qiang and his men are inside. I heard it. How is Aha? Is the aftermath done? Have you found the people they let go?" Li Anping took a step and flew over a wall. He took a few steps on the wall and reached the roof. Looking towards a courtyard 300 meters ahead. "The people have been found. None of the migrant workers who led the strike died. They were just injured. They will be fine after a few days in the hospital. However, colleagues at the scene have been complaining for a long time. You were too cruel. There were 5 or 6 people whose heads were torn off. I heard that half of them vomited on the spot." Ha ha ha! Li Qian's laughter came through the headset. Li Anping glanced at the courtyard in the distance, and with a move, he jumped off the roof. The wind blew past his ears. Kidnapping, intentional injury, rape, detention. After so many years, they should have died long ago. Li Anping landed on another small building, jumped lightly, and then crossed the buildings and rushed towards the courtyard in the distance. "How many people are there?" I asked them what takeaway they ordered. There were 33 in total. It is not ruled out that some people eat too or some do not eat. The total number should not exceed 40, Li Qian replied on the other end. Got it. Hearing this, Li Anping jumped hard and jumped towards the courtyard. Bang! As soon as he landed, a strange sound rang under Li Anping's feet, followed by an explosion, waking up everyone in the courtyard. Li Anping looked at the big pit under his feet. His clothes and shoes had been blown to pieces, and his body was covered with wounds from fragments. There are mines. What a joke! This is Tianjing. Li Anping asked, "Li Qian, can you still collect it? Is it broken?" After asking a few questions without any response, Li Anping pulled out the headset in his ear and found that it was full of cracks. He threw the broken headset on the ground, saw several people shooting at him in the distance, showed a bloodthirsty smile, and rushed over. Li Anping didn't use much force, just ran a few steps casually, put his fingers on the throats, chests, and heads of these people. They have all fallen down. But until the last person fell, no one screamed. In the eyes of the people who came behind, after seeing a series of after-images, only Li Anping was left standing on the blood-stained lawn. The quality of this group of people was better than Li Anping had imagined. When they saw Li Anping rushing over, no one ran away, and no one said a word. They just shot at Li Anping. And they seemed to have experience dealing with people with special abilities. Although Li Enping was so fast that they couldn't see him, they relied on exquisite cooperation to cover all directions in front of them with a barrage of bullets. Li Enping snorted coldly and rushed up against the rain of bullets. He was hit by dozens of bullets before he rushed in front of them. He just twisted one of the people's heads off, and the 5 people around him pulled the grenades at the same time and rushed towards him. "Aren't you afraid of death?" Li Enping grinned, kicked hard, and jumped 50 meters high. He looked at the 5 people under his feet who were looking at him stupidly, and then 5 grenades exploded at the same time, shocking a group of people to death. But at this moment, an armor-piercing bullet had penetrated Li Enping's chest, bursting a large group of sparks. Then Li Enping was seen falling headfirst and feet down in mid-air. Then more than a dozen men with submachine guns rushed up and looked at the bodies lying on the ground. But the next moment, they all turned into countless fragments and flew out. In a rage, Li Enping directly smashed them all into pieces with his fists in a few seconds. Shaking off the blood on his hands, Li Enping looked at the small house in the middle of the courtyard. His ears moved slightly and he heard several heartbeats and breathing sounds. He said coldly, 18 dead, 15 left. With a move of his feet, he dodged a row of bullets and rushed towards the small house. In the basement of the house, in addition to Yang Jiang, there was a thin boy sitting on a chair with his eyes closed, and a scarred man in camouflage uniform stood in front of him. Yang Jiang kept walking back and forth in the basement, listening to the increasingly sporadic gunshots outside, and cold sweat kept flowing on his face. He suddenly turned around and walked to the table, but was stopped by the scarred man. "What's going on? Didn't you say you could capture him in a few minutes? Why did it take so long?" The scarred man shouted, "Watch your tone. We are not your men. Lord Chiao is casting a spell. You can't disturb him." Just as the two were arguing, the gunfire above suddenly stopped. The young man who had his eyes closed suddenly opened his eyes and stood up. When he saw Yang Jiang and Scar Man looking at him, he showed a wry smile. "All the hosts that can be controlled are dead. At least he was hit a mine, 2 grenades, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, but no damage." "What did you say?" Yang Jiang became excited. "You said it, you can protect me. I gave you so much money, but so many people can't beat one person." Thinking of the first time he met Li Enping, Yang Jiang became even more frightened when the other party casually maimed his men and almost killed him. When the young man saw Yang Jiang, whose face was flushed with excitement, he shook his head impatiently and said, "Quiet." Scarface on the side saw that Yang Jiang was still arguing, so he went up and covered his mouth. The entire underground safe house is made of 3-foot thick steel. Even a rocket launcher can't get in. Just keep quiet and don't let him find us. Seeing Yang Jiang nodding, the scarred man let him go. At this moment, there was a sudden knocking sound above their heads, which sounded like a knock on the door. The 3 of them stared at the steel roof with wide eyes and couldn't help but swallowed. The young man pretended to smile casually and said, "It's okay. The 3-foot thick sealed steel plate means he shouldn't be able to hear the sounds below." Yang Jiang and Scar Man on the side nodded subconsciously, but the next moment, a loud noise exploded on the roof, as if someone hit their hearts with a drumstick. Then a series of loud noises sounded, as if a giant was hitting the roof of the building with a hammer. Boom! 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 Loud noises came one after another, including the sound of the house collapsing and the steel bars being twisted. The 3 people's foreheads were sweating. Only the young man had a pale face and forced a smile. "It's okay, Sanchi, even though he's very powerful, he can't break open the thick steel plate." "Yeah, how could a person break open something like that?" Yang Jiang also laughed nervously. "If he makes such a big noise, the police will definitely come soon, and he can't kill me." "Yes, yes," the scarred man said. Just as the 3 of them were comforting each other, the loud noise suddenly stopped. Yang Jiang laughed loudly. He gave up, he gave up. The corners of the young man's and Scarface's mouths also showed smiles of surviving the disaster, but before the smiles lasted for a second, Li Enping, who had finished gathering his energy, also punched his feet, and then there was an earth-shattering explosion. Rang out above their heads. Boom, boom. As if someone had detonated a bomb, the entire basement began to shake violently. In the desperate eyes of the three people, the steel wall above their heads made a heart-breaking twisting sound, and then a small bag that looked like a fist was revealed. And then the second one. The third one. Until the last bang, Yang Qiang fell to the ground and stared stupidly at a big hole in the roof. Li Enping jumped down from the hole. The scarred man pulled out his pistol and pointed it at Li Enping and said, "You can't." Before he finished speaking, his head had already flown out. When Yang Qiang saw this situation, his lower body smelled like urine, and he fainted and fell to the ground. Li Enping looked at the young man and said, "Can you explain to me what you just said about boarding?" The young man was much calmer than Yang Qiang and Scarface. He knew that his life was in Li Enping's hands. He answered clearly, "Like you, I am also a person with abilities, field system. The ability is to control humans as pawns, but I can only control ordinary people for the time being. No wonder those people above were so unafraid of death just now, and they cooperated as if they were one person." Seeing Li Enping's thoughtful look, the young man said nervously, "I am a member of the True God sect, and Yang Qiang is our believer, so we are here to protect him. If you have enough evidence to prove his crime, we can hand over Yang Qiang powerful." The young man's words were neither soft nor hard. They not only pointed out his background, but also gave Li Enping a step to step down. Logically speaking, very few people with abilities in Daxia would fall out with the True God section. Seeing Li Enping's silent expression, the young man was confident that the other party would not take the risk of becoming an enemy of the True God religion and kill him. At this moment, a siren suddenly sounded in the distance. The young man was about to breathe a sigh of relief, but in the next moment, in his shocked eyes, Li Enping punched his head. The long-lost feeling reappeared, and Li Enping felt a large amount of power being absorbed into his body. Coupled with the gains from training during this period, Li Enping's current physical fitness is 6.2 in strength, 5.0 in speed, and 7.0 in physical fitness. In a flash, Li Enping had left the scene and left the mess to Li Qian and the others. At 11 o'clock in the evening, Li Enping changed his clothes at will. When he returned to the villa and opened the door, Xia Yunyun and Song Tianzhen were sitting on the sofa watching a movie together. Xia Yunyun's eyes were full of curiosity, while Song Tian's eyes were full of astonishment, but in the next moment, this astonishment turned into a violent emotion that filled his chest. Xia Yunyun looked at Li Enping in surprise and asked, "Why did you come back so late today?" Song Tian on the side patted Xia Yunyun on the shoulder and said, "Yunyun, please pour us a glass of water." Oh, Xia Yunyun gave Song Tian a strange look, got up and went to the kitchen. Li Enping didn't seem to see Song Tian, so he found a place in the living room and sat down. Suddenly, Song Tian's voice rang out, "You have already accepted my money, right? Why are you still here now?" Li Enping glanced at Song Tian and said, "The one you said you left behind? I donated it to you." "Donated it?" Song Tian stared at Li Enping intently, with malicious thoughts gushing out. "Are you kidding me? You will donate so much money?" Song Tian stared at Li Enping coldly. Since the other party was so ungrateful, he was willing to be as polite as Xian Qiang. Song Tian intends to tell a fact that will make the other party feel desperate. "I know you are a person with abilities, you have some skills, you probably think you are very special, right? But unfortunately, I have to tell you that there are at least 8,000 people with first-level abilities like you in the whole of Daxia. Even Yunyun and I, both of us have higher ability levels than you." Looking at the other party's stunned appearance, Song Tian pressed his mind energy towards Li Enping. Seeing that the other party was unable to move under the pressure of his mind energy, Song Tian continued with a disdainful tone, "Don't appear in front of Yunyun again, otherwise it will definitely not be as simple as breaking a hand or a foot." At this time, Xia Yunyun brought tea, but Song Tian got up and left directly. "Ah, are you leaving now? Don't want to drink tea?" "No, there are still some things in the company tomorrow, I'll go back first." After saying that, Song Tian looked at Li Anping coldly again, and then left without looking back. What did he say to you?" Xia Yunyun looked at Li Anping with a strange face. "I don't know, maybe he's crazy." Li Anping turned on his computer and sent an email to Li Qian. "I want the True God Church and Song Tian's information." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 89. Song Bang, Li Anping muttered to himself as he looked at the information sent by Li Qian in the mailbox. Song Tian's background is deeper than he thought. First of all, his grandfather Song Bang is the current leader of Daxia Longke and is considered one of the strongest ability users in Daxia. The Song family itself is one of the 9 royal families. Other uncles, brothers, and sisters are even more prominent in military and political positions. In the election of the 9 royal families next year, the Song family is also very popular to ascend to the throne. I heard that their people have been running around recently to pave the way for next year's election. And Song Tian's pursuit of Xia Yunyun is obviously also to contact a strong man like Xia Litekeng. After all, in addition to Zhu Rong, Fei Zhang, and Song Bang, there is only Xia Litekeng, a level 5 ability user in the entire Daxia Longke. And Zhu Rong originally leaned towards Song Bang, and Fei Zhang and Xia Litekeng were friends of life and death. If Xia Yunyun became Song Bang's daughter-in-law again, it would have a positive meaning for him to completely control Daxia Longke. After reading the information, Li Anping understood that the power of the Song family was so great that it was enough to scare ordinary people. If others knew that Song Tian, whom he had offended, had such a strong background, they might have been scared and would have apologized immediately and left the villa. But how could Li Anping care about these things? What's more, what he hated most was the second generation of rich people and the second generation of officials. Rather than reconciling directly, he was more inclined to directly deal with Song Tian. If Song Tian did something he shouldn't do next. A few minutes later, Li Qian also rushed to the villa and sent a bag of documents, which were all related to the True God Church. Song Bang was the leader of Daxia Longke, and Li Qian certainly couldn't get her information, so what she sent to Li Anping was all sorted out by herself. The True God Church's information was the internal archive of Daxia Longke. Obviously, Daxia Longke had been eyeing this largest religious organization in the country for a long time. The True God Church has existed in the East Continent for more than 1,000 years, and they are also the largest organization of people with abilities that has been passed down from ancient times to the present. In ancient times, when technology was not yet prosperous, superpowers were considered to be the power of gods or demons. There have been countless religions gathered by power in history. Obviously, the True God Church is one of the most successful ones. Gather believers through power, and then use religion as a tool to gain wealth and power. This is also a common method used by most religions, but it has been tried and tested. The armed organization of the True God Church, called the Holy Alliance, was responsible for protecting the personnel, property, and believers of the True God Church at the beginning of its establishment. Now, the True God Church has apparently not recognized that the Holy Alliance belongs to them, but in fact it has been secretly supporting the Holy Alliance's illegal activities in Daxia. The young man who can control the human body should be a member of the Holy Alliance. Similar folk superpower organizations, as well as Yukideo, Fuxinghui, etc., are all due to various historical problems, which have led to the fact that Daxia Lonke has not been incorporated, eliminated, or cannot be incorporated and eliminated. Li Qian looked at Li Anping's serious reading of the information, with a hint of intoxication in his eyes. When he found that Li Anping raised his head and looked at him, he couldn't help but panic a little, and a hint of blush flashed across his face. Li Anping didn't care about these and asked directly, "Have your abilities shown signs of upgrading recently? How is Daxia Lonke doing?" "I don't understand things like upgrading at all." Li Qian shook her head. "Daxia Lonke has good treatment, the cafeteria is delicious, there is a free gym, swimming pool, game room, and high salary." Li Anping touched his forehead and stopped Li Qian from talking. "I'm asking you about their attitude towards you and me. SpecialAbilities will rush to the Northern Line for support tomorrow morning. Without him in Tianjin, I'm afraid you will be under a lot of pressure. It's okay, my colleagues are very nice to me, and many people say you are good at killing. If they didn't have such uniforms, they would have taken action long ago. However, some people are dissatisfied with your violent behavior and have been complaining about you to their superiors, but SpecialAbilities suppressed them. But their attitude is against you, and it has nothing to do with me. Many people are still worried about me, afraid that you will kill me when you are violent." Li Anping nodded, and then said, "In terms of ability, I thought about it, maybe it's not enough to just use it to collect intelligence. Can't you control paper? You practice this ability every day, maybe this is the key to your inability to upgrade." Then Li Anping discussed with Li Qian about how to exercise his ability every day. Suddenly, he moved his ears and said, "Someone is coming, you go first." Li Qian nodded and walked towards the back door. Before leaving, she couldn't help but glance at Li Anping's back. I don't know when Li Anping's back became more and more blurred. He is no longer as straightforward as before, and Li Qian is even a little unclear about what Li Anping's ultimate goal is. But this does not prevent her trust in Li Anping. With a flash of determination in her eyes, Li Qian left from the back door. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the door of the villa. Li Anping opened the door and found a sunny boy at the door. The boy looked like he was only in high school. When he saw Li Anping, he smiled. The boy stretched out his hand. "Hello, are you Li Anping?" Li Anping shook hands with the boy. "It's me, who are you?" "My name is Sun Hao, Boss Ya asked me to come." Sun Hao's smile was full of kindness. "I heard that you want to find a sturdy place to train. Well, he told me this morning that he arranged 2 people to train with me after he left. Where is the other person?" Sun Hao scratched his head in embarrassment, showing the shyness unique to a young man. "Shen Dong has something to do, and can't come." Li Anping nodded and said nothing. He knew that things must not be that simple, but SpecialAbilities' arrangement was originally to strengthen his relationship with Daxia Lonke, but Li Anping himself didn't care about this. "Then just take me there." "Okay." After saying that, Sun Hao took Li Anping into his car and drove directly to the training place. Silently all the way, the car drove through the bustling center of Tianjin and headed towards the suburbs. The car drove further and further, and Li Anping almost thought that the continuous mountainous area in front of him was not Tianjin after all, when Sun Hao finally stopped in front of an open space. He smiled sheepishly. "I'm sorry, all other places are occupied, and this is the only one left." "It doesn't matter, but where is it?" Sun Hao smiled mysteriously, got out of the car, and shouted a series of instructions towards the open space in front of him. Then with a burst of mechanical sound, an underground entrance suddenly opened in the open space in front of Li Anping. Sun Hao turned around and smiled. "Let's go, it's quite deep down there and the passage is very long." Li Anping followed Sun Hao, passing 3 inspection devices along the way, scanning their retinas, fingerprints, and Sun Hao's work ID. After walking about a few hundred meters, his eyes suddenly lit up. A vast underground space made of steel from top to bottom and left and right appeared in front of Li Anping. Sun Hao stood in front of Li Anping and introduced, It is 1,000 square meters in total. It is wrapped with a radiation-proof layer and an impact-resistant layer. The entire training room is earthquake-resistant, pressure-resistant, heat-resistant, and cold-resistant. There are also various cold, hot weapons for selection. After saying that, rows of weapon cabinets rose up next to Sun Hao, ranging from the simplest knives, swords, and daggers to pistols, submachine guns, and even rockets and sniper rifles. Of course, in addition to the 1,000 square meters of actual combat space, there are many built-in training equipment for strength, speed, reaction, endurance, agility, etc. in the surrounding small rooms. I will not introduce them one by one. They are all used on the walls. Explanation. There are bathrooms and toilets at the door. The only drawback is that there is no canteen. After saying that, Sun Hao said with a proud smile, "How about it? Are you satisfied?" "Good." Xia Yunyun yawned and walked down the stairs, looking sleepy. She glanced subconsciously at the living room. "Tch, where did you go fooling around again?" Xia Yunyun walked into the bathroom and started brushing her teeth. Halfway through brushing, she suddenly walked toward the windowsill in the courtyard. "Tch, I'll just take a look and save you from damaging my lawn." As a result, Xia Yunyun saw that there was no one on the lawn, and Li Anping was not there at all. So her face darkened, and she walked back to the bathroom with bang-dong-dong steps to continue brushing her teeth. This country bumpkin has been leaving early and coming back late these days. Where is he fooling around? Xia Yunyun suddenly stopped brushing his teeth and thought to himself, this guy won't join the great Xiaolongke and go on a mission, right? He's only at level 1. What mission can he do if he doesn't train well? No, he shouldn't be fooling around with that woman named Li Qian. That woman is not a good thing at first glance. Suddenly Xia Yunyun took a sip and spit out all the toothpaste in her mouth. Why do I think so much? He'd better disappear from my house as soon as possible. I'm relieved. Xia Yunyun continued to wash up, but for some reason, she couldn't help but think of Li Anping, and then couldn't help but get angry. In the underground training room, two phantoms pierced the air and continued to collide in the square. The impact of the fists and feet of the two people clashed caused waves of dull sounds in the underground space. If anyone saw the fight between Li Anping and Sun Hao here, they would definitely be amazed by the fighting power of the two. Sun Hao, who was in the middle of the battle, would deeply feel the terror of Li Anping in front of him. This Li Anping, every punch and kick he makes looks extremely fast and powerful, but with that ease of expression, he doesn't use all his strength at all. But I'm almost at my limit. I am also a level 4 ability user after all. There are also those layman-like movements that look clumsy, but they are all meaningful. If he hadn't been specially trained in a kind of martial arts that mainly confuses the opponent, it would be his instinct at work. The terrible instinct to fight for a living. There is no need to know why, no need to know the reason for every action. He fights based on instinct. Who is this Li Anping? At this moment, the two figures collided again, and the dull sound of impact resounded throughout the training room. Li Anping stood firmly on the spot. But Sun Hao flew out directly and rolled for more than 10 meters in the open space before stopping. Li Anping asked, "Are you okay?" Sun Hao kept panting, and a large amount of sweat was discharged from his body surface. He said intermittently, "No. It's okay." Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Go. Chapter 90. Sun Hao was breathing heavily. In contrast, Li Anping looked calm and relaxed, as if he had just finished a walk. "Hey, I'll tell you," Sun Hao said as he got up, "how much strength did you use just now?" Li Anping observed the entire training room with interest, and seemed to be amazed by the hardness of the material under his feet. Hearing Sun Hao's question, he answered casually, "About 30% or 40%. Sun Hao stared at Li Anping with wide eyes, and his heart was difficult to calm down for a long time. This was also one of SpecialAbilities' purposes. He knew that in a place like Daxialanke, if a person with abilities wanted to be respected, it would be best to show their strength directly. He also hoped that through this behavior, he could prepare Li Anping to integrate into Daxialanke. My ability is to control the electric current in my body, and by stimulating nerves and muscles, I have a speed far beyond that of ordinary people. This Li Anping is not only as fast as me, but also far superior to me in physical strength and strength. He only used 30% or 40% of his strength. You must be kidding. Where did Boss Ya find this monster? Only the first energy level? Sun Hao had seen geniuses with superior abilities, but it was the first time he had seen someone as powerful as Li Anping at the first energy level. If he knew what Li Anping's abilities were, he would probably understand that the level of ability could not be used to measure Li Anping's strength. His fighting ability was only related to his physical fitness. Li Anping saw that Sun Hao was still panting, so he said, "Take a rest first, I'll try something else." Then Sun Hao saw Li Anping go to a dodgeball training room again. He also adjusted the highest difficulty. 21 pinballs were ejected from the room, and the huge kinetic energy forced the pinballs to bounce around in the small room. What Li Anping had to do was to dodge all of them before the 21 small balls stopped. All he could see was a series of after-images flashing in the small room. From beginning to end, Li Anping did not let the small ball touch his body once. This is not just about speed, but also a comprehensive performance of reaction, insight, and concentration. Even Sun Hao himself could only do 9 balls. After Li Anping finished training, he walked quickly to the next equipment. "This monster, I surrender." Sun Hao shook his head and walked towards Li Anping. He took out a USB flash drive from his arms and said, "This is the internal information that Boss Ya asked me to give you. They are all military fighting skills that we have streamlined or improved. They are especially suitable for people with strong physical abilities. I was not convinced at first. Now you take it? I also want to know how strong you will become after practicing these things. Thank you." Reaching out to take the USB flash drive, Li Anping showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. At night, in the alley, a sexy girl with revealing clothes and dyed golden hair was running along the corner of the wall in an evening dress. Her slender and straight thighs, coupled with her soft breasts and wasp waist, looked extremely sexy. She ran barefoot and fast, her chest kept rising and falling, and her eyes looked behind her from time to time. There was still a look of fear on her face, as if something terrible was chasing her. When she was halfway through her run, 2 young men suddenly stopped in front of her. "Miss, it's dangerous to go out alone so late. Do you want to go out and play with us?" The woman saw the 2 men's lecherous looks, looked at them with disgust, and shouted, "Get out." Something incredible happened. The woman's voice seemed to have magic, and it rolled up an invisible force, directly pushing the 2 men away and rolling all the way out. After looking at the 2 people who fell to the ground and kept screaming with disdain, the woman continued to run out. But just after turning a corner, a brick flew towards her at high speed, and the woman subconsciously screamed. "Ah!" This scream directly smashed the flying brick into pieces. Li Anping slowly walked out of the shadows, looked at the blonde woman coldly and said, "Turning sound into physical force? That's a great ability. But you didn't use it in the right place." Seeing Li Anping coming out, the woman's face changed drastically, and she turned around without looking back and ran towards another alley. The speed that the woman burst out at this moment was enough to rival the world's top sprinters, and she ran more than 500 meters without taking a breath. While running, the woman looked behind her and found that she could no longer see Li Anping, so she stopped. She looked around nervously. The street lights on the side flickered, and under the dim light, the alleys around seemed to be getting deeper and deeper. Except for a few catcalls, no one could be seen. "Are you looking for me?" A voice suddenly sounded behind the woman's head, scaring her to the ground and screaming at Li Anping, who suddenly appeared. The sound waves turned into an invisible force and pressed towards Li Anping continuously, but it was useless except for disturbing his clothes. It seemed that this force was like a breeze to Li Anping. Seeing that her ability was ineffective, the woman gradually regained her composure. She looked at Li Anping and said, "Who are you? Why are you against me?" Li Anping did not speak, but walked in front of her and looked at her silently. The woman was a little creepy and said in panic, "You have killed all my men, isn't it enough? No matter who pays you to kill me, I can pay twice the price. I'm not doing it for money." Li Anping took out a photo from his arms and put it in front of the woman. "Do you still remember her?" The woman looked at the photo. It showed a little girl about 10 years old. She looked innocent and cute, and her clothes were innocent. But the photo looks a bit old. It seems to be an old photo from many years ago. The woman vaguely felt that the little girl looked familiar, but she could not remember where she had seen the little girl before. "You want to find this girl? I can use my power to help you find her," she said. Li Anping shook his head, with a touch of red in his eyes. "This is the first girl you abducted 10 years ago. Her name is Hong Mengli, and she died of AIDS 3 years ago. During the 7 years she was in your hands, you have always used her as a commodity for sex trafficking. A bargaining chip to please the powerful. Until now, her parents have not given up looking for her. Unfortunately, they will never find her." The woman panicked and said, "Are you his relative? What do you want? I can give you all my money." Seeing Li Anping's unmoved look, the woman licked her lips and suddenly took off her little bra dress, revealing his fierce hood. Her face was full of charm. "Do you want me?" She slowly peeled off her fierce mask, revealing her snow-white pink breasts. With the blessing of Nian Qi, and millions of dollars spent on maintenance every year, her 30-year-old body is still as tight as a girl's, but with the young woman's familiarity with sex, it looks even more voluptuous. She touched her chest, grabbed 2 small spots on her chest, gasped a little, and blushed on her face. "I am very good at serving others. As long as you let me go this time, I can do it." "Your woman? No, I can be your slave and make you so happy." After saying that, she boldly grabbed her hand towards Li Anping's crotch. But his hand was slapped away by Li Anping. "In the past 10 years, you have used your abilities to abduct more than 30 young girls for sex trade." Li Anping looked at the woman coldly, completely unaffected by her lust, as if he was facing a statue rather than a human being. "A lively beauty. I came to you today, just to kill you, that's all." When Li Anping pointed at the woman's forehead, the woman's eyes were still shocked. After a few seconds, the woman's pupils gradually dilated and her body fell to the ground. Feeling a trace of power flowing into his body through his fingers, Li Anping said into the headset, "We found the person, let them deal with the aftermath." In a flash, Li Anping appeared 100 meters away, and the sound of wind whistling came from the headset. Li Qian said on the other end, "Understood, we have picked up all the girls here, and there will be dedicated people to take care of them. After they have received psychological treatment, their parents will pick them up. And the money in the account. Donate them all," Li Anping said casually. Li Qian thought for a while and said, "I kept a part of it." A cold snort made Li Qian couldn't help but tremble, but she still managed to hold on and said, "After the last few arrests, I intercepted a batch of funds from those criminals. I think you need the money." "I don't need money." The coldness in Li Anping's words made Li Qian's heart palpitate. "Li Qian, don't do unnecessary things." "But I think you need it." Li Qian argued with reason, "You are more than just one person. I don't know if you will turn against Daxialanke in the end, but I don't think you will join Daxialanke. Bar. Whether you are an enemy of Daxialanke or not, a hidden fund is very useful. In this society, you need money for food, clothing, housing, and transportation. Not to mention chivalry. If you have companions in the future, or buy weapons, venues, these, and even some of your personal matters, can't all rely on Daxialanke, right? And if you want to help weak and kind people, money is also a very important part. After saying that, Li Qian remained silent. Although she didn't say it explicitly, she was leaving a way out for Li Anping. But she was really afraid that Li Anping would no longer trust him. There was a long silence, and Li Qian even thought that Li Anping had turned off the headset before his answer came. This is the only time I'll pretend it didn't happen. If you want to do something similar in the future, you must tell me in advance. Call. Li Qian let out a breath and continued, I also found a person through information search. I think he can be roped in to help us operate funds. Do you want to meet him? Just leave it to you, but you have to use your ability to monitor him. I have to know the whereabouts of every penny every day.